Okay.
All right, I got one more person coming in. Two more people coming in.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Lauren, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So I just wanted to welcome everyone here today. Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to learn about this. Yep, just sit back, get a cool drink, and relax. And there'll be a question answer period at the end. You know, we'll try not to take too much time, but hopefully this is concise and you learn as much as you can. So once I'm done talking about the education part of things, Edward Jones the team at Edward Jones will be talking about retirement savings. So, you know, hang tight for that as well. Yeah, so let's just get started. So I'm just going to do a little intro about my background, and we're going to dive into the importance of education, and then the three big financial decisions that we all have to deal with at some point. We're going to talk about what an RESP is in a nutshell, look at the government grants, and then I'm just going to share a little bit about Knowledge First, who we are as well. So I'm Lauren Graff. I'm a resident of Perth, and I'm a licensed sales representative. I'm registered with the federal government to sell RESPs and to educate the public. I'm a mom of 2.5 kids. I've got a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and one on the way. And I'm an immigrant from South Africa. And I had wonderful parents. My mom and dad were wonderful. But when it came to post-secondary, they just were not able to help me with that. And so I was able to qualify for a tennis scholarship in the US. But without it, I would have been in a lot of debt, or had very few options as far as what I could have done. And it was really a stressful time. I just remember my 16, 17, 18-year-old self was pretty stressed about what I was going to have to do. Yeah, so, you know, when I completely understand the stress that other families feel. And so my mission is just to help alleviate that and help families prepare early. I have an MBA, and I've worked in wealth management for about 10 years now. So do you believe post-secondary is important for a child's future? I think most people I speak to will say absolutely. You know, there's a variation of what post-secondary is, and we'll chat about that a little bit down the line. Do you plan on saving for your child's post-secondary education? And like I said, I speak to lots of families, and it varies. You know, some people just can't. You know, they just are not in a position to do it. Some families say the government is going to pay for our child's education in the future, which we all have heard lately, you know, might be the case. But, you know, I always try to advise people, you know, wouldn't you want to just plan in case you do have to come up with the funds in the end? Are you here because you currently have a plan but are unsure of the specifics? So have you trusted your financial advisor, but perhaps you're not sure of the details? So you've come to the right place. I think by the end of this, you should know more than most, and be armed with questions to take back to your advisor. So you're getting the best deal for your child. You're getting the best plan for your child. And it's so important to be part of, to be engaged in the process. So, you know, you can follow along as time goes on. So we're all faced with big financial decisions in our lives. We could put our head in the sand like an ostrich and pretend that they don't exist, or, you know, eventually, well, they'll creep up and we'll eventually have to deal with them. And those three big financial decisions are home ownership, post-secondary education, and retirement. And so we'll be covering two of those here today. So one of the big challenges is that post-secondary education just keeps going up in value, in cost, sorry. And Statistics Canada publish the cost of education every year. Our company have been around for almost 65 years now. And we have a lot of data to look at. So, when we look at what they put out 18 years ago and compare it to what the universities are publishing today, their Statistics Canada is pretty bang on as far as what they put out there. So if you had a newborn baby today, in 17 or 18 years from now, you're looking at about $79,000 for tuition and books. So that's if you were to stay at home. If the child had to stay at home with mom and dad, you're looking at about $79,000 for a 4-year university program. If they went to UBC or had to move away to some other university, you're looking at $135,000, and that includes residency. So as you can see, those numbers are quite intimidating. And we are showing you on the high end because there's lots of room between the low and the high, but we want to show you the high end so that you're prepared. So what are your options? You could do nothing. You could use your delay. Well, you could delay your stress and use your personal savings at the end or when they need it. You could borrow, line of credits. There's some line of credits out there. Depending, there may be some higher interest rates that you have to deal with. Student loans, OSAP is a good option. Their interest rates are pretty low. Or you could start early with an RESP. And clients are always maybe not too sure about how to do this month to month. And what we like to tell them is that if you take a portion of your child benefits, so the government today gives us a really generous amount, I would say. And if you earmark a portion of your child benefits and you put it together with the government grants, the government can end up paying for your child's education. And if you think of it that way, it doesn't matter if you have one child or if you have 8 children. At the end of the day, it doesn't have to be an enormous financial burden. And I'm going to show you how that all works out. So what is an RESP? An RESP was introduced in the 60s, and it's registered under the income tax. It was registered under the income tax in 1974. And what that means is that it's an investment that earns tax-deferred income, meaning that say you contribute into the plan for 18 years, you don't pay taxes on that. So it's a wonderful savings vehicle. And it allows you to contribute up to $50,000 per child. So that's from your money. That's your contribution. And it's the type of account that allows you to get the government grants. And I'll explain that to you in one of the upcoming slides as well. So how does it all fit together? So contributions, you put the contributions into the plan. If you imagine it as like a mixing bowl, you add the contributions into the plan, the government adds the government grants, and then that money together is invested, depending on what financial institution you're in. And over time, your income grows and it grows and it grows. And then when you're ready to take it out, it's taxed in your child's name. And what that means is that if your child is 17 or 18, it's likely that they're probably earning a very low income or not working. So they'll be in the lowest income bracket. So when they're ready to take it out, they'll probably be paying no taxes or very little. So it's an awesome program designed by the federal government. And today, post-secondary has changed. When I went to university, well, how long ago was it? 2004. Everyone was gearing towards a 4-year university program. And the RESPs at the time, when we look at what was put out there, is everyone was gearing towards that 4-year program, and financial institutions were also geared towards that. But today it's changed. Everything's become a lot more flexible. Post-secondary education has gone from a 3-week program all the way to a PhD, and that's anywhere in the world. So little Johnny can use it for a flight. You can use the RSP for a flight to art school in Italy. He can use it for a laptop. He can use it for a car to get to and from campus. It can be for an apprenticeship that is a 3-week long apprenticeship. So it's what post-secondary used to be thought of as a 4-year program. It's now no longer considered that. So let's say your child is a business whiz. You know, at 18, they started their own business. They don't need the RESP. And so what do you do with the money? Well, good news is the money is always yours. It's your savings. And you have 4 options as to what you could do with it. You could stay in the plan until they're 35 years. So that's the lifetime of the plan. So when they're 34 years old, they may want to go to culinary school, and they can do that. That's no problem at all. They can move the money to a younger or an older sibling, and or an adopted child as well. You can withdraw the money as an accumulated income payment. So yeah, you just take the principal out that you've put in, or you can roll it into your RRSP. And there'd be no tax implications on this. But as I said, you know, our company have 535,000 students in the plan, and that's probably the average that we have. And what we find is that there's a very small amount of students who don't go to university. And that's simply because that post-secondary is so wide open that sometimes a 3-week program is all they end up doing. But the RESP is certainly a vehicle for that. So the first grant is the CESG, and it's up to 7,200 is the maximum you can receive. So what that looks like is it's 20% per year on the first 2,500 contributed. And that works out to be about $500 per child. So if you could put 1,000 into the account, and it's 20% of that, or 500 into the account, 20% of that, and so on. Now, if your child gets to age 17 and you haven't collected the full 7,200, you can actually go back and collect that money. It's not lost. The only time it's lost is when the child is older and is already past December 31st of their 17th year. So that's kind of the cutoff. You can also qualify for an additional 10 or 20% based on your income level. The second grant, this one is kind of a special one in that you don't have to put a cent into the account to receive this one. Your income level has to be 48,535,000 net. So that's if you have anything less than that, you can qualify for this and get $2,000 per child. So just a little bit about us. We have been around since 1965, as I said. And if you had to take all 5 big banks together, their assets under management for RESPs, they would total $5 billion, and we exceed that at $6.3 billion. So we are actually larger than all of the 5 banks put together in terms of RESPs. We have 535,000 beneficiaries in our plan, and we assist 60,000 students annually, and we've paid out $8.2 billion in payouts to date. And finally, we are owned by the Knowledge First Foundation. And what that means is we're not for profit. So any profits that would have been made within our huge company end up going back to the students. And we've paid out $54 million back to our students since 2004. If your child graduates from the 4-year program, they can actually qualify for a graduate scholarship, which they can apply for through our foundation. And then we want to help 10,000 families open up an RESP account at no charge so that they can collect that $2,000 in government grants. So that kind of concludes the end of my piece. Does anybody have any questions?
Just unmute yourself if you have a question. All right, I'll ask a question, Lauren.
Okay.
Just because I actually have a little bit, both my kids actually were, I used the RESP program. So we did it actually for birth from both our kids. And we were lucky enough that the grandparents, instead of, because they live in a different province, decided to contribute, instead of presents, they contributed to the fund. So I have one child right now who is benefiting from that, and I still have another one who has a little ways to go. So my question is, though, we actually started an RESP for our youngest out on the West Coast, and I have found that it has not been doing as well as the fund that we had for our oldest. And I'm just kind of curious why that is.
It could very much be the interest rate, Amber. So if you compare your statements, I've seen advisors put the kids in very low yield funds, and I've seen some very good performing funds as well. It may just be as simple as that. If you started contributing earlier with the older one, you would probably be in a better shape than if you had started later with your second one. So it's just a variation of things, Amber. So does that answer your question?
It does. At what point should you consider not moving? Like if you were, let's say, not happy with your provider, or again, like myself, we live in different provinces. Yeah. At what age would you say, like, don't bother, just leave it where it is?
Well, we typically discourage people from moving over it around, I'd say, when the child is about 13 or 14. At that point, you've probably paid a lot of fees towards in the account. And yeah, I mean, that 13 is probably as far as I would go. Yeah.
Right.
How old's your daughter?
She's 14.
Okay.
Yeah, she's 14. Okay. So, all right, and I do have a question. So it says, sorry, the 48,000 was that for family income?
That's total net family income. Yes. Yeah.
Great. Does anybody else have any questions? No questions. Okay. All right. So obviously, Lauren, though, you say like the sooner the better when you start these funds is really the way to kind of go, right?
Absolutely. And what it does is it spreads out the stress. You know, when you start later, you suddenly have to put more in later to get all the grants to meet your goal. So yeah, definitely the earlier the better, and also you get more child benefits when the child's younger. So as the child gets older, you get less. So use that time to maximize their RESP and get started early.
Can you take like a minute or two just to talk about the process of when the child actually needs to access the money? What does that look like?
So it's completely in the parents' control. In the first year, there's a limit as far as how much you can take out. I believe it's 30%, and then thereafter it's pretty open as far as what you can take out. But they have that rule there to safeguard the savings. It's also they don't let the child control it, and for good reason, right? It's the parents' contributions, and it should be looked after by a mature person. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Amber, sorry if I could just say one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
If your program ends up being more expensive than the 30% that you have in the account, you can write a letter to, I think it's the CRA, and ask them to allow you to take more out. And most times they're receptive of that.
Great.
Sorry, Joyce?
Amber, I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm curious, Lauren, about, you were saying you could use the money for a car or for devices. Is there a list of expenses that are not allowed, or do you just, how do you go about deciding what is allowable as an expenditure?
You just have to prove that it's for education purposes.
Okay.
So if you can show a quote or a receipt, then that should be okay.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask a question about the grant program. It sounded like Knowledge First Financial has a grant program for lower income families, and I'm just wondering how can we get the word out about that in our local communities, and yeah, what does that look like specifically? How do families apply and that kind of thing?
That's an awesome question, Jackie. It's and it's not just Knowledge First. It's the government. It's really just a government program, and people can get it at their banks, financial institutions. So, but I've actually reached out to Lanark County Services, probably about 5 other ones, you know, that work with vulnerable families, to spread the word. And I don't know if it's a small town thing, but I get a lot of roadblocks as far as, you know, they just seem a little bit wary of it. I'm not sure why, but I'll keep trying. And but if you have any suggestions, certainly I'd love to hear, since you're probably a lot more connected than me, Jackie.
So just to clarify the program then, like, do you give them money to put into their RSP? Is there or RESP, and is there a minimum contribution needed from the families? And do they still get the government grants once you guys set up the fund?
So it's the $2,000 would be coming from the government. It doesn't require any contributions from the client. No fees would be taken from their accounts. It's really just a way to kickstart their RESP. And what we find is that 80% of those families that receive the $2,000 end up contributing, because it's motivating. Like, it gets them going right, and they've got something to work towards now, as opposed to being self-defeated and then they give up. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that was good. Thanks.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah.
So I actually work for Ontario Works. I'm a caseworker. So I have a large portion of clients. So what would be their first step? Like, just to call you, that would be their first. A lot of the times they're very nervous because, you know, not a lot of money. So like, if I had, or if you gave maybe like an email with like a step-by-step guide of what to do, and then we could send that out to them, and then that might make it a little bit less stressful and easier too.
Absolutely, yeah. We could send out some information to them, or I could give you some information to send out to them. And
Okay.
honestly, all it would be is a 30-minute meeting with me. We'd fill out the application for them online. They'd sign it right away. They just need their children's SIN numbers
Okay.
to get the grant. But yeah, once it's set up, it's pretty much automatic. Like, it just goes from there. Yeah, it's very simple.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Is there any other questions? I'm going to put Lauren's email in the chat box.
Okay, here it is too.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much, Lauren.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming and for hearing me out. This can be a very dry subject. I know not everybody's finance minded, but no, I appreciate you listening and the questions, and feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. So
yeah.
Okay.
I actually think it's very valuable. I mean, again, I have 2 children, so, and I'm really glad that we started the program when we did, because it's very helpful. you know, we didn't go in full, but still just the amount of money that we did contribute and the way it accumulated over time is really kind of help offset some of those initial costs. So, but that's my perspective. So, but yeah, I'm really happy the program's there.
Great. That's great to hear.
No, Lauren, I think too, I work with young families, so children under the age of 6, and I keep thinking that a lot of people aren't really aware of the importance of starting early and taking advantage of what's out there. So I'm thankful that you're on board, that this is something you're passionate about. And I think for all of us who know families with children, to encourage them to look into it, you know, that this is an important step in securing some kind of peace of mind, however small, that it's something, right?
For sure. Yes, absolutely. And one of the things we advise or encourage our families to do is to get their teens involved. You know, if they've got a job, ask them to put $25 in per month so that they understand the value of it and that they won't abuse it later, right? Like they'll appreciate it a bit more. But anyway.
I just remember I have another question. Lauren, can anybody contribute? So if a parent opens up an RESP, can each child just have one, or can a grandparent open up a second? How does it work in terms of the number of programs and who can contribute?
Anyone can contribute. You can open up many accounts. You can open up multiple accounts. That's fine. Yeah.
So the child can have more than one?
The child can have more than one. Sometimes grandparents will just give birthday money to the parents. Parents will just put it into the account. Or grandparents can just open up their own account for their.
But the other question is, can a grandparent contribute to the parent, or does the money funnel always through the person who set up the account? So the money would go from the grandparent to the parent and the parent puts it in?
There's usually just one payee into the account. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so I'm going to invite John and Natalia from Edward Jones to talk about RSPs.
Hey, hello all. And my name is Natalia, and this is John, and we both financial advisors with Edward Jones. My office is in Carleton Place, and John's office is in Perth, but today we're both in Carleton Place. You know, had to make sure John is on a Zoom, and that's the only way. So we're both are here. We're gonna talk about registered retirement savings plan. Since we're now sending kids to school already, now we need to make sure we can retire and we don't live with those kids that finish universities. So when we talk about investing, first I tell everybody to imagine 3 baskets. So one basket will be your security basket, the other one is the retirement basket, and the third one is the dream basket. So the security baskets protects you and your family against unexpected things like medical emergencies, job losses, etc. The retirement basket is our safeguard for our future. And the dream basket is that fun stuff that we all desire in life and makes it all worthwhile. So what is RSP and how much can we contribute? The average working Canadian can contribute lesser of 13% of their income, 18% of their income, or 27,230% per 27,230,000 per year to an RSP. The contribution can be deducted from your income tax for your tax purposes, and it grows tax-free within your RRSP account. You pay no taxes on money held in RRSP. When you first put your money into RRSP, you can deduct it from your total annual income when you're calculating your taxes for that year. So even if you're employed with the company that has a pension plan or a group RRSP, you can still shelter a portion of your income within the RRSP that you can open in any financial institution. You can figure it out how much you can contribute into RSP by checking your last year tax assessment from the CRA. If you haven't used all of your RSP contribution room, you can carry it forward indefinitely. So the next question was, what do I do with my contribution? Now that you open RSP, you figured out how much you can put in, you put money in, now comes your biggest decision, what to do with the money. So this is probably the most important financial decision. With the new investors, we're often being asked, haven't I just made the decision? I put money in the RSP. I'm investing my money in RSP. So the answer is not, you're not. An RSP is not an investment. It's rather just a holding tank for your retirement money. People are often confused about this. It is common for people to say they bought an RSP. Sorry, you cannot buy an RSP. It's like I say I bought a savings account or I bought a checking account. You can't do that. So to make sure the money are working hard inside of your RSP, you need to invest those money. So unless you're planning on retire in the next year or two, your goal with your retirement account is not a short-term, it's a long-term growth. So you need to review your financial retirement plan options carefully with your advisor and ask them to go over your investment options with you. There are many choices that's available for you based on your age, time horizon, your goals, your needs. We cannot possibly cover every single one during our time together. Plus, it's very individual. What works for me, it's not going to work for you or John or Lauren. Everybody is different. So we're always here and available for any chat with no obligation. So if you have any questions, we're always ready to answer them. Just think if you're putting your money in RSP and you work hard for your money. So you need to make sure that your money are working hard for you and they able to keep up with the inflation. And inflation has been steadily climbing every year. So you need to make sure that 20, 30 years from now, you have enough money to live on. Figuring out the right mix of the individual investments, equity investments, both in John and I are very big on and fans of the stable dividend paying companies versus fixed income investments like GICs or bonds. It is very crucial to your end results. Study indicates that more than 91% of all investments returns are attributed to proper asset allocation as opposed to clever stock solution or good market timing. I could go on and on and on why people need RSP, but there are some cases when RSP are not a good choice. So I just wanted to briefly touch on those scenarios. For example, you're gonna have a large pension in a retirement. So RSP might not be a good solution for you. Let's think about it. So you have your pension plus your CPP. So your income in retirement might not be much different than it is right now. So you need to make sure that tax break on every dollar you put in is higher than, or at least as high as, the tax you will have to pay on every dollar you will be taking out in retirement. This way you take advantage of that. Or another scenario, you're making approximately less than $46,000 a year. You're likely to be in the same tax bracket before and after retirement. In those situations, tax-free savings accounts are generally a better fit. There are different other solutions that, each situation is different, and it's good to review each situation with your advisor and see what is the best solution for you. Can be RSP, can be tax-free savings account. If you have any questions, we're open for questions. John would love to take any questions since he didn't speak yet. So please go ahead.
No questions.
No questions.
Robin has a question.
Robin has
I've got
questions.
one.
Hi, and just in relation to, so I'm with the Hospital Foundation and we receive donations and plan gifts and those pieces. So out of interest, when it comes to the RRSPs and when you have to pull it out and the tax differences, just to maybe explain how that works and how by making a contribution to a charity can offset some of those costs and the growth through the plan. If you can speak to some of that, that'd be wonderful.
That's a very good question. We'll handle the charity question first. There's a couple things with regards to donating to a charity, which is interesting. If you actually own an investment that has gone up a lot, it's actually tax beneficial to donate the stock or the investment with the big gain directly to the charity, as opposed to selling it and then donating the cash. The reason is if you sell an investment that has a big capital gain on it, you're going to pay tax on the capital gain, whereas if you donate the security directly, the government waives the capital gain. So that's for somebody that has an investment there, then that's certainly very beneficial. If you are donating something out of your RRSP, then it's when you take money out of your RRSP, it now becomes income, and then you're taxed on it. So for people that have lots of money and retired and they have more than they need and they want to donate to charities, if you take money out of your RRSP, it becomes income and you donate the money, you get a tax receipt. There is some offsetting, but it's not full. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I think more just, yeah, understanding the capital gains, the difference in the income, and definitely, I think we've addressed it as well, that you can give the gift in stock, which is more beneficial than pulling it out in cash and then making that donation. But yes, thank you.
But remember, capital gains don't have any relevance when it comes to an RRSP, because RRSP money grows tax-free while it's in the plan. Think of it as a bucket. Think of it as your retirement bucket. When you put money into the bucket, whatever you put in reduces your income for tax purposes, but everything you take out of that bucket is now taxed at your marginal tax rate. So to really benefit from a registered retirement savings plan, an RSP, you want to get good advice in terms of making sure that you're using the different investment buckets properly to reduce the amount of tax you pay the government legally. Okay.
Is there any more questions?
Yeah, so I have a couple questions. You talked about kind of retiring and relating to pension and CPP. So say a couple has no pension coming, they're totally saving for their own retirement. How much pension, old age security, do people receive, and how much money should you be saving so that you can kind of, I'm sure you get this question all the time,
Yeah.
maintain kind of your lifestyle in the same manner? Like, what's that number you're looking to hit?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's one that unfortunately does not have too many people try to make it a cookie cutter answer, the same for everybody. And I'll give you an example of why that's not valid. I have clients that they like to golf and they retire, but their idea of golf is to go to England and play, or Scotland and play St. Andrews once a year, or they go to Florida. Whereas my dad retired and his idea of golf was join Beckwith Golf Course, which was $1,400 a year, including the cart, right? So they both have the same goal, but one of them is spending, $100 a month in retirement on golf, and the other is spending $50,000 a year on golf. So the retirement plan has to be individual and it has to be specific. In answer to your question, and the same thing, somebody making $200,000 a year through their working life is probably going to want more income in retirement than somebody that's been struggling by with 40,000 a year, right? It's not realistic for somebody making 40,000 a year for their whole working life to all of a sudden decide, hey, I want 80,000 a year in retirement. That's not realistic. That being said, what can you expect if you work until you're 65? If you're Canadian and you've been in Canada for 40 years, you get full old age security, which is going to be, you know, somewhere around $600 a month. If you've been working for your whole working life or most of it, and you get your full Canada pension plan, you know, you can expect something like $1,000 a month. So there's your government base, and that's without any other investments. And, you know, unfortunately, in today's day and age, a lot of people are heading into their 60s with still tons of mortgage debt. They still got car loans. They got, you know, they're up to their yin yangs in debt still. You know, they're not going to be able to retire on that kind of money. So you're going to have to save. Where to save and how to save is important. And just like RESPs, the younger you are when you start, the better off you're going to be.
Okay. I do have some follow-up questions, but Robin's holding up her hand. I don't know if she has a question too.
Sorry, in our board, we use some sign language for hearing deficiency, so this means question in sign language. So go ahead, Jackie, you finish yours, and then I can just add in.
So I guess a secondary to that, my question would be about diversity. Obviously, you want to be diversified within your portfolio, but do you want to be diversified to the extent that you've got different holdings with different institutions and different funds, or does it make more sense to bring everything together? And is there a benefit to that in terms of rates or anything, or can you kind of?
My favorite question, but I'll give it to you. I'm jumping on my team. I promised to give him my questions.
The simple answer is we're a full service financial firm, which means we can handle stocks, bonds, GICs, the whole range of finance. We can do RRSPs, RESPs, we can do insurance products. Having a full service financial advisor allows you to assess the full range of products. In order for us to give full in-depth financial advice, it's important for us to know the whole big picture. At the end of the day, if you've got every month, if you've got money coming in and money going out, and at the end of the month, there's $1 extra, where you put that $1 extra is actually very, very important in terms of what to do with it. So if I look at somebody's full financial picture and I look at that and go, okay, you got $1 extra, but you got 2 young kids and no insurance policy, I'm going to tell you that probably that $1 should go to an insurance policy, because if something happens, you're in trouble. If you have no pension, then putting that extra dollar to an RRSP might make sense, right? If you, so there's a lot of different places for that $1. None of anything we do makes any sense to me if you've got $1 extra, but you're sitting on 24% credit card debt. I'm going to tell you, you know what, go pay off that credit card. And when you've cleared that, then come back and let's talk about where that dollar should go. But as long as you're paying 24% interest on a credit card, you have no business putting money in an education plan or putting it in an RSP or putting it anywhere, because you're never, ever getting out of debt if that's what you're doing. Okay, so having a full financial plan it makes it's a lot easier to do that if somebody's money isn't spread all over the place. The other thing, if somebody's money is spread all over the place, a lot of institutions do have administration fees and there's overlap. You can't diversify necessarily if you're with one company and you've got a dividend fund, and then with another company, you got a dividend fund, and another company, you got a dividend fund. If you actually look at everything that's there and broke it down, you know, I remember when I started, I'm a little bit, you know, long in the tooth here, but when I started, you know, people said, oh, I'm diversified. I got 10 mutual funds. I said, okay, if I can show you you're not diversified, will you do business with me? They go, yeah, sure, no problem. So I take a look at all the 10 different mutual funds that they had scattered all around. 40% of every single one of them was invested in Nortel. Well, we know what happened with Nortel, if you're old enough. And, you know, but those mistakes can happen because you think you're safe, but you're not. So as a full service financial advisor, it's better, you know, quite frankly, if I look after everything, right? That's.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I was looking for.
Okay.
Okay, Robin, you go ahead with your.
Was your silent?
My question. So my question was, it hasn't come up yet, but maybe to speak to the TFSA versus the RRSP, because for us, we have 2 young babes, and from the day we found out we were pregnant, we opened up the RESP plan. We're maxing that out, getting our contributions back. So that's our first piece. And then we take a look at, well, we've got some room in our TFSAs because we haven't been able to max those out, but we also have the RRSP. So maybe explain difference in the benefit between, if we had that extra dollar, would it go into an RRSP or a TFSA, and the difference of, you know, at the end of time, I'm assuming, maybe you can correct me here, but TFSAs might be more beneficial in the long term than an RRSP. But what do we make the selection between the two?
Another great question. And it comes down to managing the tax rates. I don't know if everyone's familiar with how the tax rates in Ontario work, or Canada, but essentially the first $15,000, these are rough numbers, don't quote me, but roughly $15,000 of your first $15,000 of income is tax free. So if you're only making $15,000 or less, it makes no sense to put money in an RSP because you're not saving any tax anyway. The next tax bracket is roughly, again, rough, $15,000 to $46,000. So if you make any amount in between those two numbers and you put money in an RRSP, essentially you're saving about 18% tax. Okay, I'm not an accountant, I don't give tax advice, but that's a rough guideline. 18% tax on your income between 15 and 46,000. If your income goes between 46,000 and about 90 or 92, somewhere around there, then you're paying roughly 30% tax on your last dollar earned. Okay, so now you picture forward when you're retired. When you're retired, you might have less income. So if you're going to have less income when you retire and you put money in, you save 30% tax, but then you take it out and you're only paying 18% tax, there's a real good savings there. But if you're only making 40,000 a year, you put money into an RSP and then you invest it for a long period of time, and then you retire and you end up with higher income down the road or higher income in retirement, an RSP is actually detrimental to you. So you find there's a lot of people with pension plans, especially, you know, if you're making 50, 60,000 and you've got a good pension plan, and then you retire and you got your pension plus OAS plus CPP plus all your RSPs, you could actually end up with more income in retirement than you have now. So it's not an exact science, but it does, you know, in the pension cases, a lot of times you're actually better off with a tax-free as opposed to an RRSP. Another thing, I'm not a fan of people that are young saving in an RRSP and then using it as a home buyer plan to buy a house. I believe that is actually a really bad mistake. I don't know if that's your case, but I think that is one really big mistake people are making. They're using their RRSPs to buy a house, their first house. The reason, you're young, you're putting money in an RSP, you're saving very little tax. Then you buy a house. Now you got to pay back your RSP at a time when your income is higher. And if you put money in an RSP when your income's higher, you would have saved more tax. But now you got a house and you can't afford to put a lot of money in your RSP. So then you don't, and then it becomes income and you actually end up paying more tax than you saved when you put it in the first place. So again, matching up the goal, matching up the investment goal is very important, as opposed to if it's truly retirement, both tax-free and RSPs are very, very good vehicles. Which one depends on your individual situation. As a general rule, the higher your income is, the more an RRSP makes sense. The lower your income, the more a tax-free makes sense.
So just to clarify one more thing then, so I'm retired, you know, the dream, it actually comes to reality and I now get to retire somehow, I don't know when. And I have an RRSP plan and I have a TFSA plan. So from what I'm understanding, and again, it's basic, but when I take money out of my RRSP plan, I'm taxed on that as income. When I take money out of my TFSA, I'm not taxing it because it's tax-free.
That is exactly right.
So ideally, at the end of the line, if I have funds, it's probably more beneficial, depending on where I'm at with the scenario you just described, that I have more in my TFSA because I don't get taxed on that when I pull it out versus the RSP.
At the end of the day, you're better off having all your money in a tax-free. However, you know, if you're in a higher bracket and you're saving, if your income is above 90,000, you're paying 43% tax on your last dollar earned, right? So there's huge tax savings in putting money into an RSP, saving the tax now and investing it, and then paying tax later. But there's not that big of a benefit if your income is 40,000 to put it in an RSP, save 18%, and then when you retire, you take it out and you pay maybe even 30% tax because your income may have gone up. So there's a, you know, you kind of make some estimates, life changes. That's why we do reviews. We do reviews of people's, you know, situation all the time to make sure that what we're doing still makes sense. You know, people get married, people get divorced, people get an inheritance, they win the lottery, they, you know, they blow money, they, you know, all kinds of things happen throughout a life. And it's important to review what you've been doing and where you're heading. It's important to review that regularly because there are changes that happen regularly in life. I don't know anybody that just sort of says, okay, I'm going to go on this career, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get married and have 2 kids at 30. I'm going to stay in the same career for the rest of my life. I know exactly what my income is going to be until I'm 65, and then I'm going to retire. And I know exactly how much my pensions are going to be. No, nobody knows that. Very few people know that. Okay.
Great. Sherry has a question. Sherry, you just have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. So what's the difference if I have an RSP with my bank and my financial advisor with my bank or like your company?
There's a number of differences. One is we are independent. Edward Jones is a very, very big company. We're actually bigger than Royal Bank, but we don't look at because we have small offices with one advisor and one assistant in it. We don't have our own products. That's very important. It allows us to give independent advice. So I have no incentive to recommend a mutual fund or a stock or a bond. My goal is to help you achieve your long-term goals. Whereas in investing in a bank, doesn't matter what bank, they're going to sell you a bank product, almost certainly, right? Because they have them. So you wonder about the value of the independence of the advice. If you're in an organization that is selling their own products, is it the best solution for you, or is it the best solution they have? Or are they dictated to sell that to you from head office in Toronto somewhere? Being completely independent takes away all those conflicts of interest, right? So those are some of the major differences. When you dial one, our office, you're going to get me or my assistant, or you call Natalia's office, you get Natalia or her assistant. It's not 1-800, one for English, two for Japanese, bing, bing, bing. And after 27 prompts, you're going to end up with somebody somewhere. You're getting the personal service, which is something we pride ourselves on.
And so what type of services do you offer? Is it just a financial advisor, or is it what exactly?
Again, we're a full service financial firm, so we handle a full range of financial services in terms of financial planning, retirement planning, education planning. We do, life insurance protection. So a full range of financial services. And again, we're fully licensed to do mutual funds, stocks and bonds and GICs and whatever financial solution that you need, we will put a plan in place and keep you on track to achieve those long-term goals.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a really quick question. So you mentioned a little bit about pensions, that if you have a pension, that there's not a lot of advantages for you to have an RSPs. So I was wondering if you could kind of speak a bit about the option of, if you have a pension, that you can actually contribute to your spouse's RSPs who does not have a pension.
Okay, another good question. I'm going to say, correct you a little bit. We said not all people with pensions as an RSP makes sense.
Okay.
Certainly somebody working for the government that's making $130,000 a year, an RSP still can make some sense because they're in that high tax bracket. As for spousal RRSP, that is a good way to split income. It's one of the only legal ways to split income in Canada. Basically, for those who don't know, when you put money into a spousal RRSP, it comes off of your income, but goes into an RSP in your spouse's name. When your spouse takes that money out, it's taxed to them. Right now, spousal RSPs make a lot of sense. Unfortunately, people with pensions often don't have very much room anyway. So there's not really a lot of opportunity to do that. But fortunately, when you are retired, pension is a splittable thing anyway with a spouse. So if you're still with a spouse when you retire and you're getting pension income, you are allowed to split your pension with your spouse. And so a spousal RSP is less important than it was in the past, but it is still a very useful tool. And so, yes, thanks for the question. It is a good thing. Again, it depends on the individual circumstances.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Okay, so I probably have about 100 more questions. I guess I'm going to have to book an appointment with Natalia. But that was a great presentation. And I know that both John and Natalia are available to anyone who has any more follow-up questions, or to do a free consultation, which I heard earlier on in the presentation.
Absolutely.
So yeah, no, great information. Thank you, John and Natalia. Great to see you. And thank you to Lauren for the presentation on RESPs. I can attest it's a good place to put your money for your kids. I have one at university and one going in a year. So ours definitely has been a lifesaver. So we're just at 1. So we'll wrap up. Hopefully everybody can get